There the man is.
How y'all doing?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing good.
What do you see in the marketplace? Talk to us.
Time to go to work is what I see.
The
Time to go to work.
or
No,
what?
no. I heard someone saying something about properties. We actually are still. I think we only had two properties available, and as far as rentals went, and it looks like they're disappearing as of yesterday. So it's surprisingly we're still seeing people actually out here in the rental space for single family homes, still trying to purchase and do whatever. So basically, we have two people right now that are actually seeking and trying to do lease option or rent to own. So um, haven't seen a drop off yet. Haven't really even seen a drop off in sales. To be honest, we've sold a couple properties. We had one that's been suspended, but um, surprisingly, things are. I know I've talked to a bunch of people that have lost some contracts and whatever, but we're still seeing stuff still moving along. But today is the 7th of the month, and I'm probably at about 35% across the portfolio for rent collection as of this point.
Is that normal for you?
Heck no. So, and we have, quite a bit of stuff. So, we sent a letter out a week ago, no, probably about 10 days ago, basically advising our tenants to, because of COVID-19, we wanted to be as compassionate as we possibly could through this process because we know a lot of people have lost employment, hours cut back and whatever. But one of the things that we stated in the letter was that we wanted individuals to contact us prior to March 31st and to let us know just where they were in regards to being able to make their payment on April 1st. I think out of all the letters we sent, we only got like 6 responses back with people saying they needed help or basically um, letting us know what amount of rent they may be able to pay. Of course, we prefaced the letter with also stating that, hey, this is not a waiver of rent, but we're trying to work with you through this situation as best we possibly can. So partial payment or whatever, and then we will set you up a payment plan to make restitution on the balance. So we only had 6 responses, and like I said, I'm at about 35% on rent as of today, which we're 2 days past the late period, which means that we're we, we got our fingers crossed to see what's going on here and how this is going to shake out. I was actually apprehensive about sending the letter because I thought it was going to open up a can of worms as to basically having some people hearing, hey, I might not have to pay rent. But, I felt that that was the right thing to do. I know some of you may be aware, watching the news, that across the nation, I've seen some landlords that were pretty harsh, or tenants bringing some pretty harsh letters that landlords sent to the forefront. And I saw, consumer protection advocates and everybody jumping in on landlords as if landlords are supposed to, have free accommodations. But, of course, everybody on here, that you know, most every state now has a moratorium on rents and evictions rather, and a moratorium on foreclosures. So what are you going to do in some respects? And some of you may have seen this. There's actually hashtag don't pay rent is running prevalent across the nation. I've got some people that have 26 unit apartment complexes and better that I know of that their tenants actually got together and said, we're not paying rent. If one doesn't pay rent, none of us are going to pay rent. And, actually send the landlord a letter and say, we're not paying rent until this is over.
Yeah.
So,
So, I've looked across our portfolio. We're right on par where we normally are, but we're usually at 50% at this juncture in the month. My property manager manages a number of different folks. He had people ranging, one of our properties was at almost 80%. And then he had somebody in the pot that was only at 10%. I talked to another investor. He's got 160 units in Winston. He is at 97% collections as of yesterday. And then the property that we have in Richmond, we only have one person that hasn't paid so far. And, that puts us in the 95% range. And so, we're seeing stuff all over the board and not really getting a clear indication on like, all right, if your rent's 450, people aren't paying, or if your rent's 500, people aren't paying. It's just kind of all over the board. The Richmond property has the most rent, and we got higher percentage of income there versus some of the other stuff that's at a lower price point. And so, I don't know that there's any real rhyme or reason to it. The thing that I struggle with, and Tony is a really good example of it, like he knows where his collections are supposed to be. And so he sees a difference. And if somebody can't say, hey, we're normally at this amount at this point in the month, that's when you start getting in trouble because you can't make any decisions. We didn't do any preemptive letters. And so now we're into the phone call phase, right? And we're calling and saying, hey, how are you doing? What's going on with your rent? And then in that conversation, if they say, well, we lost our job or our hours were cut, we're asking for documentation from the employer. We're making sure that they filed for unemployment so that they can start getting that income. And then we're making sure that they file their taxes so that they can get the stimulus check. And then, if they do those things, then we'll work with them. If not, then as soon as the moratorium is lifted, then we're going through the process because they're not doing their part. And, we're not just throwing up our hands and saying we can't do anything because we don't think that's responsible for, our partners.
Mhm.
Section 8 shouldn't be affected by this, right? Section 8 checks should still come through as normal.
That's my belief.
Yeah, that's my understanding. Yes.
And Brian is going to actually, I posed this question to him for Thursday's meeting, is what does it look like if you're a landlord? Because there's two sides to it with the tenants and then with the landlords. And most of it is tied to federal. So if you have a federally backed mortgage on your property, then you're protected. If the tenant is receiving any type of state or federal benefits, they're protected. Because the way they read it, if you see any of the memes that are out there right now, is most tenants can, most landlords can. So Brian will address it on Thursday on what that most means, what that forbearance means, and what everybody is not forbidden from being evicted. And just because the courts are closed, that can pick up in 30 days. That it's really more geared towards anybody who's receiving any type of federal or state benefits. That's where that law was imposed. So my little 2 cents.
And then, for the people that have loans, and I'm not sure if I'm confusing the two, Terry, but like if you've got a loan and your mortgage company is allowing you not to pay, they're expecting you not to evict. Like there's contingencies on you not paying, and then you still have to make that money up in the next 9 to 12 months or whenever it ends. And so, if you're fortunate enough to have that option, but that shouldn't be what happens in April. That's a May, June, July thing, right? You should be paying your April bills from the money that you made in March. At least that's what most people that I know do. And so if you're calling your bank and saying, I can't pay April, they're going to freak because that means something bad happened in March. And it wasn't COVID in March.
Yeah, I agree. We've collected 50% of our rents, and which is about normal for us. And when I'm on the phone calls with other, owner operators that have hundreds of apartments, they're sitting like they normally do this time of the month. It's May that they're really concerned about, because, like you said, the people that normally pay, they're scrimping, they're saving, they're anticipating that they're going to have to pay the rent, so they might be able to find the money for April. It's just May that they might not. They might start running out. So that's what everybody's concerned about.
Yeah, but I mean, in theory, the stimulus check should show up, right? And I mean, it's not like people are going to, there's no guarantee that people are going to pay their rent with the stimulus check. But in theory, the stimulus check should show up. I don't know, man. I mean, it's a mess, though. At the end of the day, though, it all comes back to, I hear people saying, well, is anybody fire selling? Is there a deal? You know, is somebody ready to wash their hands of a property already? They haven't felt the pain yet. You know, the income hasn't dropped off, the expenses haven't jumped up. And so I'm not sure why anybody would be desperate to sell unless they were already desperate to sell.
I don't know whether I would say on that is that it's just my experience from 2007 and 2009 timeframe as well, which was nothing like this. This is unprecedented in itself, but you have some people that are actually freaking out about this, and it's not a matter whether or not I'm able to still make this payment for this month. It's some people looking at this as this is something that will never happen to me again. So we're still seeing people that are no, seriously, you have people that are basically saying, you know, we can't think for sellers or think for homeowners. And so there's some people that have already pretty much resigned themselves that regardless of what programs being made available or whatever, this will never happen to me again. And if I can get out of this situation, I'll rent. And we saw this in 2007, 2009, that, you know, that's the one thing that I would advise everybody on this conference to actually do is that make sure you stay in tune with all of the programs that are going to be made available as a result of what's going on right now. Make sure you know, incline yourself to hear and look and listen, put your ear to the ground and learn all the programs. I think one of the things that I tell people that I think helped me achieve a level of success in that time period where we had a bad market in 2007 through was the fact that I learned those programs. You know, when you learn, you know, back then, if you guys remember, they had the HARP program, Home Affordable Refinance Program. They had the HAFA program, Home Affordable Foreclosure Alternative. They had the HAMP program, Home Affordable Modification Program. And, you know, we were able to get a lot of properties in that time just because we were able to learn the programs and be able to convey to your seller or that person that was in a distressed situation, being able to help them navigate through those programs, which and sometimes they did, you know, sometimes it didn't result in you actually buying their property because you actually were a help in that case and you helped them be able to retain the program, their property. But oftentimes in cases, these people had already thrown their hands up, like I said previously. And yes, I don't want to have a mar or blemish on my credit report, but those were actually opportunities for us to either purchase their home via option to purchase or purchase their homes via subject to, with some great terms based on what we were able to do through a government program that was offered to them being in a distressed situation.
Tony, are you seeing anybody call notes due right now?
Excuse me?
Are you seeing anybody call notes due?
No,
Okay.
no, not yet. No, not now. And I think they'd be crazy to try to do that right at this moment because the government's throwing out all this money. And if you're calling notes, you're not going to get the money, point blank. But, you know, I would not be surprised. You know, we did see that as a result of 2007 through 9, going up in 12 and 13, where, you know, a lot of banks that got antsy or skittish didn't have an appetite for particularly the single family residential market, and we're calling entire portfolios due and on performing portfolios. So I'm talking about people that were making payments. They were saying, hey, we don't want to be in this business. You have 30, 60, 90 days to finance us out, or we're calling these loans, you know, calling the loans due and payable. And my wife and I actually got to actually manage some of these banks' REO properties because as a result of them having taken them back from investors.
Tony, are you only managing your stuff now, or you have stuff outside too?
No, my wife's a broker, so we manage stuff for other people as well.
What are you seeing outside of your personal portfolio from collections and so on?
So far, they up to now, I think they were doing better on that side than I was doing on my side. But see, God is good. As we've been speaking, they've been reining in. So, so I got to go back and reevaluate where we're at. So I think things are good, but right now, but no, I think on that side, I think we've seen about 60-something% up to this point, which is still a little bit below where we are usually by the 5th of the month.
What are you doing to give your owners peace or encouragement, or are you trying to make them comfortable, or are you just letting them be paranoid if they're a little skittish right now?
No. We advised them of actually what was going on and what was, kind of preempt the strike already because of the governor's orders and what you're seeing nationally. I don't know how much you've been staying in tune, but there are a lot of locations which, I had this conversation with Brian the other day where you have people that are coming in to rescue tenants and people that are paying rent, right? Everybody's coming in. No way, we're not going to let people get evicted during this. And I can understand where they're coming from. But on the other hand, if we're out here saying that tenants can stay rent-free and basically we're going to stop the eviction process, then you need to have something for the landlord that has a mortgage that's due. And Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and Chase Bank and everybody else is looking for a mortgage from that landlord. And so I haven't seen that component of it yet, where we're saying, okay, well, if we're going to be keeping people in properties and we don't want to displace individuals, we're going to give landlords the opportunity to not pay mortgages that are due. And I'm serious. I get to look at this stuff on a national level nowadays, and I got a lot of people that are around me that are actually really freaking out because their local governments have pretty much said there will be no evictions. And I think I think here it expires April 17th is supposedly when everything is supposed to open back up. But if we're still in the same position as we're in today with the stay-at-home orders and whatever, I don't see us moving off of that. We'll see, but I don't see where they're going to move off of this. And if I know Governor Roy Cooper, as I've known him when he was Attorney General, my expectation is that they're going to be saying again, no evictions.
Yeah, I imagine we'll go through that in May as well. So what do you saw 2008 and you went through that, you made it through. Do you think this is shaping up to be worse, or you think it's a V? You think it's kind of like a notch and goes back up? What do you think this is?
Everybody has asked me that question. I told them anybody that's talking, I don't care. I think this year makes me 24 years of doing this stuff. But so I've seen some, some stuff. 2000 through 2002 was, we had a little bit of stuff going on, but I don't think there's anybody really that can speak as to what we have right now, because what we're saying is a complete and total reset of everything in every industry. I mean, 2007 through 2009, that was pretty much a mortgage crisis type something. It didn't have anything to do with every industry. And so right now, there's businesses right now that I believe that if everything was to be fine tomorrow, that are never going to open the doors again. There's some restaurants and some small stores, that probably would never open the doors again. And so, of course, that impacts people being able to own homes and stay in there, and people haven't been able to rent homes as well. So I think the biggest thing that I think has just helped me throughout is always diversifying your portfolio to the extent that you're doing multiple things all the time. rather than just focusing on one particular niche. 2007 through 2009 timeframe, I can tell you right here in the REIA, I was one of the founding members of the REIA myself, Dave Kitty. I can tell you that we used to have lunch meetings in Winston-Salem where there would be 75 to 100 investors every week. And when I say every week, till we were constantly changing venues all the time because we could not accommodate the investors at lunchtime. And probably 65 to 70% of those investors were wholesalers. And when 2000, somewhere about mid 2007 or sometime early part of 2008, we were down to lucky to have 14 to 15 people in the meetings.
Can't make any money.
Yeah, because you couldn't sell the house. I mean, you couldn't, there was no buyers. And so if you only had a wholesale strategy, then you were out of luck. And so that's why I'm always telling people, a multiple streams of income approach to doing this business and diversifying your portfolio where you're doing a myriad of things. You may have one niche. You may have a niche. That niche might be your rehabber or a wholesaler, or you like to do rentals. But as a result of what you do from a marketing perspective, you do everything that's presented to you. Every opportunity that comes in front of you, you try to find a way to make it work for you in some capacity using 5 or 6 different exit strategies.
What should people be doing right now in order to make sure that, whenever things get back freed up and open up, that they're in position to capitalize?
I think if you're asking me, I think the thing I said earlier, this is time to educate yourself in all the creative venues that you possibly can. This is, just spend time educating oneself. I think the other thing is, again, is really, really staying in tune with every aspect of what is going on with our state and local representatives, as well as nationally for sure, as to what programs are going to be available. Because those programs, your knowledge of those programs is going to be a significant benefit to you if you know what's out there, what's available from a lending perspective, if you know what's available from the forbearance perspective, modification perspective, all that stuff. If you can master that stuff, it's going to make it that much easier for you as we open back up and start to move on.
That makes sense. So is this a YouTube and podcast thing? Is this books? What do you think people should be doing to get educated?
Well, I look, I look at all that stuff. I'm not as big a proponent of the YouTube venues as some are. I mean, is great, but there's also a lot of people on YouTube who don't have no business talking about nothing. And so you just have to be careful with who and what you're listening to. But if you're able to find some courses or find some reputable individuals that are training, I would take those opportunities now and try to make sure you're educating yourself. If you hear me speak at any time, I'm always talking about the knows, what you know, what you don't know, and what you don't know, you don't know. And all those knows are dangerous. All those knows can cost you money.
It's interesting. There are people looking for deals and thinking deals are there. I mean, from a fundamental standpoint, residential real estate hasn't changed, has it?
No, I don't think so. I just think that, the one thing people are most of us are really, really skittish. A lot of us, we operate in fear anyway. And so when we have something that's undetermined, that we can't define, makes it easier to run than face it. And, just like, I don't know how many people I encounter nowadays where you're in Lowe's or you meet them out in the mall or wherever, and they say, "Oh man, I know you're still doing business, doing real estate, and I know you're doing well and whatever. I wish I would have stayed with it." And so, the thing is that I think having a good sound business plan and adhering to your plan and vision, and actually as well, it's just knowing that real estate is cyclical. And so you have market cycles, you know, you're going to go through, you know, if you know the 4 market cycles, you know, you have recovery, you have hyper supply, you have recovery, expansion, hyper supply, and then recession. And so, you know, and we probably had, from what I've seen, you probably have about 8 good years, and then you're going to run into something like this. Or not like this, but you're going to have some type of recession. But the point is that not only what we have to be mindful of all the time is that not only is real estate cyclical, real estate is local.
Right, hyper local.
Right, it's local. You need to learn your backyard. So if I had to say something to somebody, learn your backyard, because Nevada or Arizona can be experiencing a recession even in previous months from before COVID-19. There's, you know, and we're doing expansion, okay? And you know, not only is real estate local, when you said, Jerome, when you said hyper local, you're right, because you can have recessive areas in your local market while other areas are expanding. But, you know, I remember particularly back in 2007, 2009 timeframe, I remember listening to something on television, and Susie Orman was, you know, she was giving her prognosis of what real estate was doing. And she said, I remember this specifically, she said, real estate, the market has not reached rock bottom yet. And my advice would be to tell people to stay away from real estate. I wouldn't buy real estate for another 5 to 6 years. And so she said that, and that people, I know that ran a lot of people out of the real estate market because of what Susie Orman said. And I'm glad she said it, because she helped alleviate some of my competition back then, you know, because she made people run away. But I believe if you learn your backyard, learn your marketplace, and remember that it is local and this is cyclical, and you know, you get in where you fit in.
Yeah. So Gabriel asked a question about closing and overall buyer behavior of the higher caliber buyers. And I assume that means people that are buying things in cash. Here's my 2 cents on it. The more wealthy a person is, they tend to be more skittish and risk averse. Their first goal is capital preservation. And so it doesn't matter to them if they make a few $1,000s by doing a transaction or a few $100s a month by adding something to their portfolio. And so what they're probably going to do is ask for some type of extension, kick the can down the road so that they can get some more data to make a better decision. If it looks like things are going to go back to normal, then they may be comfortable proceeding to close. If they don't know, then they may decide not to fulfill the contract, lose whatever money's in the deal, because they'd rather do that and wait and buy it at a deeper discount if they think that that's actually what's going to happen. Because from my perspective, we're still so early in this thing. We don't really know what the backside of it's going to look like, whether, you know, everybody's going to be unemployed. We got 30% unemployment. Nobody can afford a place to live, et cetera, or, you know, doors open back up. People start spending money because they've been cramped in the house. And things go back to maybe not where they were before, but let's call it 2015. I don't think we were in a bad place in 2015, and so it probably still works. And so, you know, is your buyer somebody that's flipping, or is your buyer somebody that's adding to their rental portfolio? Because I think those are 2 different buyers. The people adding to their rental portfolio may be willing to go forward with a transaction. You know, Tyler mentioned, Shailene mentioned, they've got stuff on the market, not getting a ton of traction. That may impact their sales price. That may lower their sales price to get it moved. And that is, you know, something that people may not want to go into the water. Now, with that said, you know, we're getting into the time of year where, depending on the complexity of the flip, that property isn't going to be ready for market this year. It's going to be ready for spring market. And so they may be a little bit better deal to cover those carrying costs to get through the winter to get back to that spring market. And so, you know, just the thing for you to do is understand their investment thesis, understand their strategy when you're presenting the deal to them on how they're going to actually execute. You may want to ask for higher deposits to give them more to lose if they choose not to perform on the deal, and give you some more certainty on what you're actually going to make. And I think those things can protect you. But, you know, to sit there and think you're going to get 5, 10, 15, $20,000 for each one of your wholesales, I just don't know that you can be confident there. I think the space is really more of, you know, what can you get in earnest money upfront or due diligence fee, whatever you want to call it, and you can count on that money. So I don't know if that was helpful or not, Gabriel, but that's my 2 cents on it. Anybody else can chime in. I'm not the expert.
I think one of the most important things is, let's make sure that we have multiple exit strategies, because, we might not be able to sell that property in 3 months, or, so you've got one hopefully closing in May, and then you hope to have 6 more by July. So, if you are getting these properties under contract, let's make sure that you can, fulfill your part of the contract. And if you can't, you better make sure that your contract has escape clauses in it, that if something does go south and you can't close on it, that you have a way to get out. And, we want to be open and upfront with all of our sellers. We don't want to mislead anybody and make promises that we can't keep. So I would keep that in mind too, if you're going to be doing this too.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't exciting in the wholesale world, but if you don't have the money to close, tell them that you're not actually going to buy the property. You're going to sell it to somebody else for them. Because if there comes a period where you can't perform on the contract and you got to go back and tell them, hey, I'm leaving the contract, then, you want them to be prepared and they can't be upset with you, because if they're selling because they're distressed and they're counting on you to perform, you want them to know why you wouldn't perform, because they'll never forgive you, and you may shrug your shoulders, but the world's really small in real estate and it comes back up. And, people have a lot of time at home right now, so they can go find things to write reviews and write letters to attorney generals, and there's just a ton of opportunity. And I think the ethics of wholesaling and subject twos and all these other transactions needs to be raised in this period, because the last thing you want to do is be identified as somebody that's taking advantage of others. Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, that part, that's going to be a big component coming out of here as well, is that the antennas of those folks that are working on behalf of consumer protection, attorney general's office and all that, are going to be, I think I saw Josh Stein about a week and a half ago on the North Carolina News Channel early in the morning, where he was talking about the attorney general's office really focusing on scams that are opportunists and that are taking advantage of people. So I think it's incumbent upon all of us is that making sure we're doing good, sound business. And if you're utilizing creative strategies, to make sure that you understand those strategies that you're utilizing, and that you're straight up front with people. Like you said, Jerome, I'd be a little bit careful about telling people that I'm going to go find somebody to sell it to. I'd be careful as how you use that, because you don't want to come off as looking like you're a broker, and
Right.
then you got another problem. And I just say it for the wholesale world. I think it's already being pretty much attacked across the nation already, with several states already considering all types of laws and statutes to put in place to almost outlaw or eliminate wholesaling. That's going on in a lot of different venues right now. And so I think just got to be careful, particularly in this climate and environment, to make sure that you're being ethical. We don't want to come off as predators. We
Right.
want to come off as helpers. And like I said, you helping someone may not result in you actually buying a property. It may be that you did a good deed because you were able to tell someone something that they weren't aware of, and you were knowledgeable in a program or something that could help them, and that resulted in them keeping their home. and you'll get your blessing somewhere down the road.
So, Tony, I appreciate you correcting that language, and I don't know what the exact words are too, because I'm not doing a lot of wholesale transactions. But what should you say so that you're transparent that you can't perform on the contract, but you let them know that you're going to bring somebody else to the deal without looking like an agent?
Well, I don't know whether or not I'm actually going to disclose that, because I'm still going to go out. What I would probably advise somebody to do is, rather than you go out and you have a contract, something under contract 30, 45 days, and then you take on the 30th day to let someone know that you're not going to buy their property, is you let them know well in advance that, hey, this isn't going to happen, and whatever reason it is that you're going to give as to why. Because I think, particularly right now with the climate that we're in, if you start saying, if you do anything where you're saying, I'm going to look for someone else for you, I think the language always has to be, I'm going to go find me a buyer. I'm finding me a buyer. I'm not going to find you a buyer. I'm going to find me a buyer. And I think if you can stay in that realm, you're in a lot better space than just trying to telling someone, I got your house under contract and I'm going around looking for somebody that I can sell it, that to sell for you, because then you have the appearance of being a broker.
As I think about it more, actually explaining the process of signing the contract is where the real value is in the conversation.
Correct.
I'm putting your house under contract, and I intend to sign this contract to one of my partners, and I think that does well.
Right.
We're up a few minutes until. Are there any other questions we can answer? I don't just want to check it out. Tony, appreciate you for sharing your wisdom, man.
Thank you.
I have a question. My name is Ron. I actually am an affiliate of a few lenders, and I know earlier in the conversation we're talking about needing a 30-year, possibly as an alternative, have a 30-year mortgage. I guess when you guys were talking about that.
I didn't understand the question. Tyler, maybe?
Yeah, I think Ron, what you were talking about is that flip that I've got going on in Moxville, and I was concerned about not having financing in place if this thing does go south and I can't find buyers. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I was wondering if maybe we can have a little call. You can call me after this, and I may be able to find you a lender that is still lending at this time, and I can refer you to that lender.
Do you work with several?
Well, several. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Are banks still lending? Because I talked to Lee Burris at American National Bank, and they said right now they're lending. They haven't shut lending down, but if you come to them and you want money, they're going to ask you why. Why at this time are you trying to buy this property? And why at this time should we lend you this amount of money if next month you could come to us and say, I need a forbearance on my mortgage because I can't pay the mortgage. So, those are all good questions. I think the money's there. I just think that they're hesitant to lend it out. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah. But I would like to call a couple of my lenders to find out exactly where they are, because I just got off a conference call with one of them, and it sounded like they're still doing lending. In fact, they've even lowered their requirements for borrowing money. So I'm going to give them a call to make sure where everybody is that I'm affiliated with.
Yeah, absolutely. You said it was Ron. I'll write your number down, Ron. And
it's 336.
Yeah.
587-7636.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, just give me a little, maybe. Can you call me tomorrow? Just because I need to spend probably the rest of the day talking to them, and and then that way we can, maybe about 10 o'clock tomorrow, that we can set up a little call and maybe even do a conference call with one of them. We can see what we can work out.
Yeah, that sounds good. Now, is anybody else working on anything in particular that they're concerned about? I know that Gabriel had some wholesale stuff he was working on. Anybody else, Terry, you got anything going on?
We do have some things going on, but we've also been working with Brian for an addendum for closing delays and the such, but nothing that's stopping the show.
Okay. Gotcha. Jerome, do you know any more about the Greensboro thing? I know you mentioned something about Friday they lifted some of the regulations on realtors.
So hopefully I answered this question correctly. So realtors are now considered essential personnel. And so for part of the week, whenever the last thing from the mayor in Greensboro came out, basically said realtors can't show any houses. They've changed that now after working with whoever. And Carrie actually sent it out from the board where they changed the order so that realtors can show homes in Greensboro now. Just have to follow social distancing guidelines, and they prefer virtual tour, but if that's not available, people can go in.
Gotcha. And then I had one for Tony. Tony, have you seen anything in the care package that that we should know about as investors?
Have I seen anything in as far as what's been offered to us?
Right. So anything opportunity wise, because I know a lot of us are small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that there's the Paycheck Protection Plan that really doesn't really apply to me, but it would cover mortgage interest, utilities, and then also rent.
Mm-hmm.
So that might help some. And then there's also the disaster relief plan. So I'm just trying to figure out if there's anything in there that we all need to know about that we should be checking into.
What you just named is actually all that I have really seen to this point. It's my expectation that as this thing goes on and they start to try to go through and make amendments and do other things to keep this economy stimulated, that I expect that they're going to go through and do some things and go back and address some things that weren't a part of what's in this big package that they have right now. Again, if you're able to take advantage of even if you can get some money to help you, for some of us that maybe you don't have the reserves that you need, I would recommend that you try your best to see if you can qualify to get some of these loans that are out there, even if it results in you having to pay it back over time. Because if you get into a situation, and I know that there's a lot of investors that unfortunately live, their portfolios based on paycheck to paycheck as well, and counting on tenants paying rent. And if the tenant's not paying rent, they're going to be in jeopardy. So I would tell you to try to get on it early as you can, as we see that they're having it looks like it's a disaster with this rollout thing, because from what I've been seeing about it, they've just been overwhelmed with the amount of people applying. But I guess they'll eventually work through all that. But I would tell you to tell everybody on here, if you're able to try to make sure that you can, get on board with what's being offered and take advantage of that situation. And even if it means you're just using it to pay your rent or whatever. Because it's just being honest, a lot of people don't have reserves. And if, a lot of people with small portfolios, 4 to 6 homes or something like that, you got 4 to 6 homes, and particularly if you're doing single family and they make $200 or $300 a month cash flow, you have 2 people not pay rent, that kills everything, and
Right.
As well as your ability to pay the mortgages, underlying mortgages that you have. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, having reserves is definitely a big key to the situation. And we want to say also, on behalf of the Triad REIA, and I'm sure Tony we're not attorneys, we're not professionals, so please consult with somebody else that you have on your team that can answer more poignant questions that are specific to your situation. Are there any other questions that you guys have while we're here on the call? I really appreciate you talking to us, Tony, and helping out, and Shailene for putting this together. And if you don't know, we're going to have another meeting on Thursday, same time, so 12:30, and then again on the following Tuesday at 12:30. So there'll be an hour apiece, and it'll be Brian Elam will be talking to us from Innovative Closing Solutions. So it'll be a more broad, not just real estate specific topic about this COVID-19 thing. Got anything else, Tony? Anything you want to talk about? Anything you want to plug for helping us out?
Well, I do have a asset protection trust and sub-2 workshop coming up in the weekend of in a couple weeks, April 18th and 19th, and it's going to be live stream. You can go to our website, housewaytowealth.com, to find out information on it. But it's going to be a live stream. We're going to be able to do pretty much everything that we do at a live event on the live stream. So look forward to seeing maybe some of you guys on that. We're going to go and dive into the sub-2 concept and how to utilize it, and how, trust, entity structure, what entity best suits you for whatever type of business that you're actually actively in. One size doesn't fit all. So we're going to talk about those things that give us as investors the highest advantages.
Absolutely. Sounds like great information. And you mentioned entities. We're talking about the SBA, and if you guys haven't checked out the programs that the SBA has going on, please do, because there is money out there. So if you're struggling, there's money out there to help. I think that disaster relief thing, you apply for it, and even if you don't get the loan, you'll get the $10,000 that they'll send you, and you don't have to pay that back. So, if you are struggling, at least apply, see if you can get some of that money. And it's first come, first serve. So make sure that you get it in soon. And then with that paycheck protection plan, if you did have a payroll, that's mainly to cover your payroll and mortgage interest, rent, utilities, and things like that. So with that situation, they'll give you 2.5 months worth of those costs. Yep. And that is, I think it's due over 2 years. Is that right, Tony? Is that what you heard?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the interest rate is, I think it's 0.5%.
It's crazy.
Yeah, really, really cheap money. So if that is your situation, please check into these programs. And then the other one, the disaster relief one that we talked about, that's 3.75%. So still not expensive money. And then for nonprofits, it's I think it's 2.75%. So there's some really good programs and opportunities out there. So do your research. Like Tony says, you don't know what you don't know, and you need to find out, because there's a lot of good information out there. So check into that stuff. Please respond to us. Let us know if you have any questions. Otherwise, we will see you guys on Thursday, 12:30. That's all I got. Thanks, everybody.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Y'all take care.
Bye now.